Okay. I'm going to leave that there for now because we might come back to it later on, but I'm just going to block it out for now. So, this is where we start off. That's the most basic thing that our code can do. So let's go back to our manual and see if we can actually figure out what we want it to do. So the module consists of 4 buttons, each containing a T word label and a coloured LED. Determine which is the relevant column of the table. Press the words in the order they appear in the table. Pressing the words in the wrong order will cause a strike and reset the labels. So, we're somehow going to need to label these buttons. That's something that we are definitely going to need to do. Something else we're going to need to do, which I might do first, is create this little LED at the top. That's going to be an important step in this. And I'm going to do it with lights rather than with changing the materials to be blend unlit, because it will be quicker for me to demonstrate it for you guys at home. But you don't need to follow on with the line. Yes, it is a lot of words. Have you not seen the script before, TW? It's a rather good manual. What we've actually got is that each of the things has 20 words in them, and each of them has the same 20 words but just rearranged into a different order. So we can set the LED first, and we can actually pick the words first and pick the column after. And the reason we're going to do that is just for something that will become clear as and when I get round to it. Because it's going to be easier to pick the words and then fit them into a standard order rather than pick the order and then pick the words out of it, because if we need to reset it, we might... you see what I mean? One thing this module is not going to do, it's not going to change the colour of the LED after a strike. Now, I wonder if anyone can tell me... There's fewer rays, very good. Oh, I'm sorry, I know it's one of those horrible things, you can't do both at the same time. I will be on YouTube and on VOD to catch up. Now, I wonder if anyone can tell me, why am I not going to reset this LED on a strike? There is a reason for it. I'm going to reset the words, but not the LED. Why is that, do we think? I'm going to have some more wine while you're thinking about that. That question's open to anyone, incidentally. Very good, Gibbous, because the LED helps determine the column. And I've decided that once the column is set, I don't want to change it. I can change the words within that and redecide what the correct order is. But if I've got to pick a different column, which will be from a list, which we're going to do later on, it's not impossible, if anything is possible, but it's going to make it more complicated than is necessary. So for this, we're just going to have the LED stay as the same throughout. I'm going to give you... it would just be inefficient, you're quite right. My phone is going to die any minute, which means I will lose the chat. Obviously, I've got the chat open on Chrome nearby, but it just means we get a little bit of rostering if we go into that. So as and when my phone dies, I will pop over into that. So the first thing we're going to need to do is determine to pick a colour for the LED. Before we do that, I'm going to go back into the inspector and just create a few new materials. I am also going to create a light. So this bit you don't really need to follow along with. It's just something that I'm going to do because this is how I sort of fancy this module being. So we're going to call this here LED light. Let's change the range down to 0.1, 0.01, 0.02, 0.0, that'll do, 0.5. The intensity is going to be 0.5, I think. Let's just zoom in on that a little bit. And we'll just bring that up a little bit higher. 0.5, I think. And the light is just going to be a standard white. Now remember that LED earlier on, we gave it a load of, we gave it a green colour. I'm now going to give it, what colours have I got? What options have I got for colours? Red, green, blue, orange. So it's going to be one of those. So it's going to be 4 colours, which I've red, orange, green, blue. I might need a line. Red, green, and I quite like the green, blue, orange. Okay, so I'll just keep quiet about it. I personally can't see how you're going to code in the edgework unless you've already done that. No, I haven't coded in the edgework yet. We'll get to that. Don't worry. Yes, Ash is going to keep quiet about lights. We don't discuss lights. Ash thinks lights are very expensive, and from a coding point of view, they are. The size of lights that we're using and the size scale of game that we're using is not. I don't think they're enormously expensive relative to the hardware most machines are running it on. Ash, I know, does a lot of work for programming games on mobile. If I'm speaking out of turn, Ash, then please do correct me. But on mobile, every single chromosome of space you can save is yeah. Anyway, what I'm going to need is an array. I need a choice of colours, and those are my 4 colours. And for this, I'm going to need a public material array, because each of these are materials, and I'm going to need 4 of them, and I'm going to call them LED options. Okay, that's my material array. I'm also going to need the thing that I'm actually going to change the colour of, which in this case is the LED. So I'm going to need a public renderer. Now a renderer is just, as you might expect, is an object that is rendered as something with a mesh renderer attached to it, and this means we want to call it LED. LED options and LED. And that's just a standard sort of thing that I've gotten into using is options. You can do LED colour options, LED colour choices, but when you get into getting comfortable with your own language and the language you want to use, then you find that the stuff that sticks with you and you know what it is. I'm going to sneeze in a minute, please bear with me. Oh, yes, good sneeze. Right, so LED options. Now there's going to be 4, and I said they were going to be red, green, blue, and orange. Lights do have their place, but for very small glowy effects like this, it can be fake without needing a light component altogether. But as you say, that's just my experience talking. So I'm glad we're on the same page there, mate. Red, green, blue, and orange is what I said. So let's do them alphabetically, because that's as good a way as any. Blue, green, orange, red. And pop them in. And then the renderer is going to be this thing I called LED. There. Now the LED light is going to be permanently on. Make sure you unlock afterwards. So I've got my little array of 4 colours, and I've got my LED. At the moment that light is orange. Okay, so let's have a look at what that looks like. Okay, that light's not very bright just yet, so let's give that just a little bit more intensity. Maybe just bring it up a bit higher. Possibly even afford to bring the range up slightly. And a bit more intensity, maybe 5, not putting that 2. Again, you don't really need to worry about this. This is me mucking about with effects. Can I bring it down? And 6. No. 5 is good. Bigger range. Slightly bigger range. I promise you I will go back to the tutorial in a minute. This is me just sort of mucking about and trying to make things pretty. But for the amount of objects in an array, is it set up manually in Unity or can it be set up via Visual Studio? You can make a new array in code as well. My original new info build make an array of instances of 40 long. Basically exactly what Ash said. If you wanted to do a code-based array, you could go private material array, material options equals new material array, and then you just define it as whatever length you want it in there, and you can even add in the stuff afterwards. But I just, if you're doing public stuff like this, then it's just much easier to do it manually. Okay, that's about the effect that I want. Now, for all intents and purposes, that light that I've put on is no different from if you guys were starting off and you wanted to do a blend unlit. It's a nice, neat little glowy effect that just sits there at the top of the module and tells you what colours, and you can see that in the dark as well. It's a nice, different effect from the blend unlit, which I'm not an enormous fan of. Okay, but the crux thing that we're talking about here is this LED options and the LED. So the colour options and how we're going to colour it. Now, normally I would save whatever the LED index, and I'll talk about indexes in just a second. I would normally keep that in a little local variable, but because I'm going to need to use this later on in the logic to determine which column we're using, I'm going to keep it as a global. So we're going to go private, because I don't need to define this publicly. It's going to be defined by the code, which I'll show you how in a minute. So it's a non-inspector piece, and it's going to be an int. It's going to be a little number, and we're going to call this LED index. Now, because it's private, we can't define it in the inspector in here. So we need to define it here, because it's an integer, equals 0. It's not a very interesting integer, I grant you, but it's going to become more interesting in a minute. We just need it in its base place for now. Okay, for the first time, we're coming to our start void. This is the thing that happens just after awake. And the first thing I'm going to do, this method down here, the word press, from the awake method up here, that's only if we press a button, but we want something to happen at the beginning. We want it to calculate something, because it's all well and good pressing buttons and getting stuff in the console, but we need to know, first of all, we need to define our puzzle, and then we need to know what the answer is. The computer needs to know what the answer to the puzzle is as soon as possible, ideally before the lights have even come up in the bomb room. Most puzzles do work that way. There's a few exceptions. I know the cube is one I programmed where the answers aren't physically calculated until the cube has finished doing its rotations. So if you play the cube, that's an interesting one to look at the code for. Is this part of the edge work? No, we're not quite at the edge work just yet. We're a little bit away from the edge work. We will get there though, don't worry. This is a bit, first of all, where I'm going to tell you how to change the colour of this light. So, to do this, we're going to send this to a new method. We're not going to do everything in the start method. We're going to go pick LED. I'll put pick LED color. And then we put the parentheses, which is going to send it to the next method, and then the semicolon to define the end of the line. Because it's not defining a method, we put the semicolon to end the line. When it's defining it, we don't put a semicolon. I'm also going to put this around an if statement, which I'll explain later. If that I'll explain to you in a little while. It's not important right now that you know what that means. I will explain that in a little bit. But for now, I'm going to go to our pick LED color. We're defining the method there, so we don't need parentheses at the end. Okay, pick LED color. We need to pick a color. We need a random color, and we've got a choice of 4: blue, green, orange, or red. Now, if you look at this array, elements, that's what they're called. The size of this array is 4. You've got element 0, element 1, element 2, element 3. Now, it's just a fact of coding. Most computers start counting from 0, and you'll get used to it. It will come, it's a little bit frightening and a little bit of difficult concept to grasp when you first do it, but computers start counting at 0. So we want a random integer between 0 and 3. So we're going to ask for the following code. We need to define our LED index. Okay, it's that private integer up there. It's currently 0. It's not very interesting, so it's always going to be blue at the moment. So we're going to give it the option to be something else. You get to put in custom sounds and images in the module, easy to click and sound for this one in the stream. Maybe it's 11:15. I wanted to finish sometime between 12 and 1, so it depends how we get on. I will do my best. If not, then I will. I won't finish this code. I will finish this code on stream. All right, so I won't finish this code before. I won't finish this mod before I finish this stream. Okay. So we're going to take this integer up here, LED index, and we want to redefine it. So to redefine it, we're going to use this bit of code. It's going to be a standard Unity code. So we're going to do Unity engine .random .range. Okay. The reason we put Unity engine is because we're using system, and they both got a definition of the word, of the function random. So if you don't define it, it'll give you an ambiguous error. It doesn't know which one it wants you to do. So we define it as UnityEngine.random. So we're going to collect a random number within the range, open parentheses, and then we give it its range. There's a reason for this that I can't remember now, and Ash is probably going to explain it. I did know it, I was talking about it only a couple of weeks ago, but when we're defining the range between which number it can pick, the lower bound goes first, and the lower bound is inclusive. We then have a comma, and then we have the upper bound, and the upper bound is exclusive, which is really, really strange, but it can work to your advantage. If we want a choice between one, we've got a choice of 4, so the upper range is 4, even though 4 won't be included. The upper bound will be 3, and the lower bound will be 0. 0, 1, 2, 3 will be the options. 0, 1, 2, 3. So there'll be one of 4, but 4 is exclusive. It doesn't pick 4. And there's a reason it does this. Ash is about to explain it by the looks of it. There's a reason it does this. With floats it's different. With floats it's inclusive for both, but because we're using integers, it's something to do with the fact that it gets it modulos it. I think it gets an enormous number and then modulos it so that it can take the lower bound, but it can't take the upper bound because the upper bound would always return it to 0. I think it's something like that. Ash is going to confirm that. While he's typing that, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do with this new number. So this is going to give us a number of either 0, 1, 2, or 3. And these are going to refer to these options in our LED options over here. So it's going to pick a number, whatever it is, and then we need to colour our light with that particular material. So we need to go take our renderer, which in this case is called LED, dot material, remember we've got an array of materials, equals, so the material of this renderer here, the material of this renderer is going to be LED options, because that's our array of materials, and then which one do we want it to be? Because it's in an array, we need to give it a number afterwards. The number we're going to give it is whatever number this is, LED index. So LED index is going to be a random number between 0 and 3, and then our LED renderer, the material of that renderer, is going to be one of these material options, and then the index number, whatever was picked before. Normally the RNG will just pick some integer within the full integer range and modulo it into the range of values you want. The exclusive upper bound is kind of the effect caused by a modulo operation. Yeah, I thought it was something to do with modulo. So I'm happy I knew that. So, what this tiny little bit of code does, it's going to go through await, it's going to go into start, at the start of the code, it's going to go through this, featuring additional commentary from AshTheBash. Absolutely. Well, I learned everything I knew about modding KTaNE from AshTheBash, so it only makes sense that the master is here to see the student become the sort of, keen amateur, let's say. I wouldn't go so far as to say master, but yes, the master's here to see the student become the keen amateur. That's good. It's going to go through pick LED color, which is going to take us into this method down here. It's going to pick a random number and then assign that color to that renderer. Now let's see what that looks like in context. I am refraining from saying lots of other things. My very young Padawan learner. It's appreciated. So, here we go. There we go, there's a green one. Let's go again. There's a blue one. There's a red one. Oh, let's see if we get 4 for 4. There's blue again. Look at that. It's green again. We'll get orange in a minute. It will happen. There we go. Okay, so we know we can get all 4. And that's really lovely. Right, something I'm going to do now, and I'm going to do it before I forget, is I'm going to create a new little object here. And this is not how to code. This is called material cubes. and I've done this with a lot of modules recently. When I first started coding, if I wanted to change the colour of something, I would change the texture rather than the material, because you can get the texture directly, but to change the material, it takes what's called an instance of it. It doesn't copy it. So if it's taking an instance of it, it has to be already in the code somewhere. And the problem with this is you don't know this until you're testing on a computer that hasn't had the build on it. So Ash might actually have a little fix for this. But what I tend to do is just take lots of very, very, very tiny cubes. You see my tiny little cube, and I'm going to hide it underneath the module, and it's so small you're not going to be able to see it. But onto this cube, I'm going to put an instance of each of the colours that might come up. Because if it's not somewhere in the code already, when it comes to fill this in, it won't know what the material is if it's not already there. And so that's when you get the horrible things that are painted bright magenta. If you've ever seen that in a module, you get really, really magenta, unpleasant stuff. And I think it's probably magenta to show you, really obviously, you have made an error somewhere. So because it could be potentially any one of these textures, but I don't want to start the thing off with all these textures in. I'm going to hide a tiny, tiny cube under the module. And because it could be either red, green, blue, or orange, I'm going to colour this one blue, and you can either drag it onto the object or into the scene directly, into the hierarchy, into the scene. Duplicate and colour that one green. Oh, it's not going to let me do that. Piss. Come here. That one's blue. I'm going to colour that one green. Duplicate that one. Colour that one orange. And duplicate that one and colour that one red. Could have a material array on your script though, rather than have teeny cubes. That would only be if you're trying to make it a lovely shade of magenta. Yes, indeed it would, Rock. I have got material array on the script, Ash. That's the problem. I do that a lot, and it doesn't like it. I don't know if it's a Mac thing or something else, but this way, I know it's incredibly unprofessional, but those are there, and as far as anyone else is concerned, they're not there. So I've got my teeny cubes, and I'm just calling those material cubes. We never need to talk about them again. The only thing I might do, actually, just to make this a bit more interesting, I'm going to add in, since we got it made earlier on, and no one's used it yet, I'm going to add in a purple colour. So let's say I want to add a purple colour to my LED options. I can just drag that into my LED options right there. I've now got a fifth one, and I need to up the upper bound so that it's 5. So now we might get a little purple light as well. What I'm going to do is just drag this into my prefab, because I haven't done for a while, save it, and hit play. You see what's in trouble? Well, that's reassuring, thank you, mate. So now, and you see the lights off, you get that little glowing effect, which is really cool. I want to see what the purple looks like. Show me, there it is. Okay, so as Rock was saying, that kind of looks sort of magenta-y with that light. When the light goes off, it goes to a proper purple. I'm not sure how I like that. Maybe I need to dim the light slightly, or change the colour of the light. Why you do this? Why you do this? I don't know why the light is being so strange all of a sudden. It's not letting me pick the... Come here, light. Let me select you. I don't know what's that. Let's just minimise the window for a minute. Oh, that was very strange. I'm going to bring the colour tint of this light down a bit. So that looks slightly better, and it still glows with the light off. It's still quite magenta, isn't it? Sorry, for goodness sake. It's not quite as magenta-y as it was, is it? That'll do. Let's copy that alpha code. Yeah. Copy, stop, LED light, select, paste. There we go. Right. Just dim that down slightly. So now we could get a purple light as well. So it's only in off. The global lights are off. Anything's possible, Gillis. Maybe set the light up so it's only on if the global lights are off. You mean the lights in the room? Yes, that is possible. It's not something I've done, but I know it is possible. You can set up a delegate in where have I gone? In your await void, which is something like oh, I wouldn't even know where to start. It's on delegate plus equals no on incorrect. It's something like lights off. Or something. I'm not going to do it now. I'm just going to embarrass myself if I do that. But it's something like that. You can do it so that the lights go down. Yes, River. I made tiny cubes, material cubes, so that I don't have to reference instances of the object. The objects are all just there, hidden underneath the module. Tiny, tiny cubes, which is very sweet.